Today I thought I'd do an acrylic painting of these 4 street musicians that I saw in Exeter a few months ago. And I'm also going to try and create this painting with the minimum number of brush strokes. We'll see how that goes, but it's just kind of an idea I wanted to explore a little bit. But for now, we're going to start out with our A2 mixed media paper. I've got my peacock blue watercolor marker pen. It might be Kingfisher blue, actually, Kingfisher blue. And let's begin with a fairly loose drawing of these 4 guys and their instruments. So I'm going to start with the chap on the right of the quartet. So there's his head. And the big horn is coming up there on the right. Now, he's partly obscured in this photo by the head of that lady who's walking by. And I quite like that, actually. I may incorporate that into the finished painting, because they are out on the street, they are in the middle of a city, and that's kind of the reality of the situation that they're performing in. So we'll perhaps put those pedestrians in just a moment. We'll see how we go. So that's pretty much all I can see of him at the moment. Let's move on to the next guy on the banjo. So his head's actually tipped more over to the left than I've first drawn it. So we've got his legs coming down there. And a foot there. So he's more or less in place, and obviously I haven't gone into detail on the instruments or anything like that just yet. Now, the guy to our left of this chap, his face is partially obscured by the trumpet of the chap on the far left. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep. I quite like the idea of showing his face, so I'll perhaps move him over here a bit. But I like the fact he's looking across, although if I draw him there, he's going to kind of get in the way of this guy's banjo arm. So let's move his head over here a bit more. Foot down there. Now, let me just mention a point about foreshortening. So if we go back to, say, this chap here, it's not that clear in my drawing, but there's his shoulder, there's his upper arm, there's his elbow. And then in terms of putting in his foreshortened forearm at this point, I've really just ignored it and put the hand in. And that's a good way to approach things, I think. I've kind of done something similar here. Here's the upper arm, elbow, put the hand in, ignore the rest for the moment. It's a good way to, I think, to get the initial placement on the paper without kind of over committing yourself to a situation you might struggle to get out of later. Okay, so I think we'll then put the end of the trumpet there. So that way there's still the interaction between this guy and the guy on the far left, but this chap's face won't be hidden anymore. So there's this guy's hand, and head. Bit of a hat, collar coming in there. So there's his hand. We sight the position of the elbow, which is basically below that ear. And there's his shoulder. And really for now, that's all I need to say. And then obviously his other hand is up there on the trumpet somewhere. So I will draw in a bit of a forearm this time. His other elbow's a little bit lower. Indicate some feet. So we've started to place these four chaps playing away on their instruments. So I think I am. Let me just have a look at this now. I think it will be quite nice if I just put in an outline of the people in the foreground, and then what I'll do is I'll indicate the background lightly as well. The foreground people will be more or less in silhouette, and then I'll paint these four figures up to pretty much a finished painting. Okay, well, I've switched to my chunky burnt umber acrylic marker now. So these lines are going to be rather bolder than the other ones. And so, I'm not looking to paint this lady's portrait, but we just want to make our lines look like a realistic figure. And then she's holding the hand of the guy she's with. He's got a watch strap on that I just put in there. So that's often worth including, because it helps to just subtly create a sense of 3D. I don't really even need to, draw him in completely. I quite like the fact he's sort of disappearing off the edge of the frame. And then we'll put this other lady in, who's there, a little bit off in the background, but I'll give her a little bit more of a ponytail than she's actually got. She's got a bag over her shoulder as well. And in terms of those figures, I think that's all I want to do, and I'll probably just leave them like that. So as I say, I'm going to paint up these 4 guys, probably do something with the background at first, and then these guys will be the main focus of the painting. Okay, well, I've loaded up my palette with tinting white, cadmium yellow light, cadmium red, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, burnt umber. These are all the interactive acrylics. Now, in terms of the way I treat the background, these guys are standing on tarmac or pavement, which is quite dark, and they're also wearing dark trousers and shoes, and I quite want those trousers and shoes to kind of stand out a little more than they are. So my plan is to leave the pavement completely white, which will kind of flow into this area here, which I'm planning to leave untouched. But for the background on the left, and for perhaps the top of the background here, I want a little more contrast between the white hat and the white shirts of the guys. So my plan is to kind of hint at the busy reflective background we've got without going into too much detail there. So we'll see how well that works, but I've got an idea for that. So I've got a wide synthetic brush. It looks to be about 1.5 inches wide. It's a flat. So I'm going to grab some of the yellow, and we'll mix that. We'll grab just a touch of the cad red, touch of the cerulean, which has made things greener than I wanted. So we'll go back in with a bit more of the red. I've gone way too red, so let's get some yellow there. Okay, we're starting to get in the general direction I wanted. We'll take a big lump of the white, and I don't want to mix it too thoroughly. I'm also going to pick up a little bit of the yellow on that corner of the brush, and I've no idea if this is going to work all that well, but we'll give it a whirl. Spray the paper with water, and here we go. Okay, so I quite like the texture I'm getting with just applying the brush very lightly. Let's change the direction of the brush strokes over here. I'm deliberately leaving white gaps of uncoated paper. But you can see the different colours are coming out onto the paper because I didn't thoroughly mix the paint and I picked up that little bit of yellow. So I want to partially cover that first attempt at the second guy's head. Now, if that shows through in the final painting, I don't mind too much because it's going to kind of hint that there's a bit of movement going on. I've got a bit of a drip here, which I'm not overly happy about. So we'll just sweep through that rather quickly. And although I wanted to keep the pavement completely white, that's no longer the case, but I'm not too concerned about that. Now, I like the burst of red that I got there. And I think that will probably do for the background. So just added some fresh yellow to my palette, and I'm switching to a smaller 1/2 inch brush now. I've got that background tone still there, So let's make use of that, and we'll put some more white in and a bit more of the red. And that can be the beginnings of a flesh tone. So I'm going to just gently mist the paper with water. Well, it was a bit more than a gentle mist, it was a bit of a steady downpour, but I haven't soaked it through, that's the point. Now for this guy's face, let's just put a block of tone in there. And then, although I can't see all of his shirt collar, I can think about the negative space the shirt collar creates, so it creates a little V. And then his hand is sort of 3 fingers, and then there's a little finger down there, which is away from the others. And then his forearm comes down and to the left, gets obviously wider as it goes towards the elbow. Now, in this photo I can't, well, at the distance I am from my screen, I can't see all that clearly what's going on with his hands, but the general shape is something like that. And then his other forearm comes down there. And then I can move over to the second guy. So we can block in his face. Notice I took care to just slightly put a gentle V there for his hairline. And again, thinking about the shape that his collar makes against his neck. And then we're down to this arm. And hand. So I'm just going to sweep the brush that way for the suggestion of a hand. And then let's see if I can do something similar for the other hand as well. We'll go against the bristles. I'm not sure that worked all that well, but it'll do for a first pass. And then got an arm there. Guy number 3. Again, a little V shape for the neck. A bit of paint went a bit wayward there, but I'll leave it for now. We'll see if we can get away with that. We'll see what the overall effect is nearer the end. Now so the hand on the banjo here, just got to think about the general shape the fingers are making. So they're curved around that way. And the back of the hand is there. I'm going to lift off that bit. Oh, I can probably cover that later. And then, now this hand, which is doing the plucking or strumming, sort of angled that way, comes up there a bit. The knuckles kind of come down that way. And then there's a bit of forearm showing. And then moving across to the final guy, blocking his face. Now he's puffing quite hard, so we'll exaggerate a little bit and bellow his cheeks out. Well, it's not that much of an exaggeration actually, now that I look again. Neck, hand, back of the hand, and a bit of wrist. Okay, so That's worked okay so far, I feel. Okay, well, I'm going to stick with the same brush, although I've cleaned it out now. We'll grab some of the ultramarine and mix that up down there. And grab a good lump of the burnt umber. And that's going to give us a nice dark bluish colour. And then, again, just very lightly, on bottle, very lightly. So I'm not spraying directly at the paper, just sort of up into the air nearby, letting some of the water land on it. And then we'll start to put in the waistcoats and things that these guys are wearing. So I'm going to start on the right this time. That chap's shoulder comes down there. And then got a bit of a waistcoat there. Could probably do with bringing that up closer to the hand that I put in. And then obviously that continues below the arm and also over to the left a bit as well. Now, because of the way I've drawn the woman's head, I'm not sure if you'd better see waistcoat here or not. I think I'll put a little bit in perhaps for now. But let's move over to the next chap. So I'm just going to go all the way down the length of the figure there. And I quite like the way the brush is sort of petering out as I go down. And then we've got the banjo strap coming down here. I don't think I want to do too much more to his feet, but I do need to just fill in his torso here a bit, I think. Guy number 2. So his collar is obviously protruding, the points of his collar are protruding over the top of his waistcoat, but I'll have to come back and do that because I can't really, or easily at least, I can't simulate that with this brush. Could make some kind of a clumsy attempt, I think, but I think it would be just a bit too tricky. And then really the rest of his body is more or less in silhouette. So. And then on to the final guy. Oh, I forgot this chap's feet actually. And then the same colour that I used for the waistcoats and trousers, I can use for the underside of the hat here. And the second guy's hair. And then even this chap's hair as well, I think. I just go in gently. And we may as well keep going with that theme. And then even the center of the big horn here. And a bit of shadow in there. And then we'll put a touch on the end of the neck of the banjo. Okay, well, next up I want to just add some subtle shadows to some areas of the shirt. So we'll stick with the same brush, grab some of the tinting white, but this time I'll grab some of the cerulean blue and perhaps just a touch of the burnt umber. Now, in some places I think, it's a very minimal treatment, but I don't know that I want to do too much more to the shirt in terms of the sleeves here. But I think perhaps just a little bit of shadow here on the belly and perhaps on the chest there. And then we'll take a similar approach for the next chap. Put a little shadow there. And then really I'm just putting kind of a shadow color here on this arm just to make it stand out a bit more from the background. I mean, we don't necessarily always have to have that being the case. There doesn't have to be a distinction, but I think it's going to help in these particular cases. Well, next I want to add some color to the instrument. So we'll grab some of the cad yellow light, just a touch of the cad red. And bring in more of the yellow. And some of the tinting white. And let's see how that works if we pop that onto the paper here. That's not too bad, actually. I mean, we're going to have to add some highlights and so on, but for the initial hit of color, I think that's working reasonably well. And then I don't really want to get into describing things too fully, but we can use that same color to begin to put in this chap's clarinet and a bit of the trumpet here as well. And although it's not, a colour of the banjo. I'm going to put a bit in there for now. We'll cover most of that up in a moment, I think. But now that I've done that, I'm actually thinking, well, perhaps I won't cover up most of that because it kind of keeps it a coherent colour scheme. Well, I've switched to my little filbert now, and I'm picking up some more of the burnt umber, and I'm mixing that in with the darker version of that orange I created earlier. And we'll keep the paint that we just applied fairly wet. And I'm going to use this now to put in some of the darker reflections. And we can also use that for shadow colour under there. And then a little bit more of the burnt umber, just adding that. And we'll, taking back what I said a moment ago, we will cover a fair amount of this banjo. But we'll leave just enough of that orange showing so that there is a bit of coherence, as mentioned before. And then now on the inside of the trumpet here, the reflection's a little bluer than it is here. So I've just added some ultramarine blue to that dark orange, which has produced kind of a deep green, but I think that might work just as well, actually. Let's see if we can. Yeah, I think that's not too bad. And then I think I can continue to make use of that colour and just hint at some of the structure of the trumpet without going into, a huge amount of detail there. But we perhaps ought to take some of that same colour and just indicate that, the instrument is going into the guy's mouth. And having said that, that's just reminded me I need to do something similar for the chap on the right. So just mixing that into so there's the dark green, just mixing it into the light colour I had before. And we just want to, now I've got to get this in the right spot. So there's the bit going into the mouth, comes down there a bit. And that sort of connects that instrument to the guy's face. Okay. So back to the flat brush and pure tinting white. Just add a bit of a highlight onto the hat there, and that's not really as opaque as I would like. Oh, actually no, maybe that is okay now that I step back. That's perhaps enough for now. And so now I think the next thing I'm going to do is come in and add just a few licks of dark and highlight here and there. So we'll do some highlights first. So let's take some of that tinting white and mix it in with one of these pale colours that I had before. Let's get a bit more white on the brush. And we'll get the surface of the painting fairly moist. with the water spray bottle, and there's a bit of light on this chap's forehead there, bit of light on that chap's forehead. The fingers here have got a bit of light on them, and there. So very simplified treatment. All right, well, gone back to the filbert now, and I want to add a few just gentle shadows onto the faces of the people and possibly the arms. So I've just grabbed a bit of red and a bit of ultramarine blue, and as you can see, I'm mixing that in to the patch of sort of pinky orange I had before. And I think I want a bit of the cerulean in there as well. And that's probably going to be close enough, I would think, to begin with. So again, just keeping the shapes fairly big. So a little bit of shadow there under the brim of the hat, under the chin, perhaps a little touch under the nose there. Under the sort of heel of the hand, down the underside of the forearm, under that hand there, and down the right hand edge of that forearm as well. And I think that started to bring him to life a little bit. And we'll try and do a similar thing here. So we'll go under the chin of this chap. Put a bit of shadow down the right hand side of his neck. Shadows in the sockets of the eyes. And under the nose. And then this guy here with the banjo. Do something similar. Oh, and I need to put some shadow on the underside of the arms on this second guy. Back of the hand there. Just improve the line of that forearm as well. With a little touch of shadow. So what I'm trying to do is enhance what I've got without losing the good bits. That's what I'm hoping to achieve. And then this chap's ear is quite silhouetted, so we may as well put that in. This side of the head's quite shadowy. Bit of shadow for the nose. And for the eyes. I'm not sure I'm too happy with the shape of the top of his head now, so we might come back and adjust that in a bit. But we'll add a bit of shadow on the forearm there. So I'm these three I'm quite happy with. I think that's worked quite well. But as I just said, I might tweak the shape of the top of his head. Let's see if we can do that now a moment. Grab a little bit of the dark blue and blue and burnt umber colour that I used earlier. I think that's improved things a little bit there. Now, having done that, I'm just mixing what's left on the brush in with the pale blue I used before, because I've just realised I can perhaps pop a little triangle of shadow there where his collar is, another one there. And then going back in with that lighter colour that was on my brush and mixing it in with the burnt umber and blue combo, I can use that to put a dark line on the underside of the hat there. Put a little bit on the underside of the banjo. Just sort of hinting at some of the intricacies of the instrument without, you know, getting too involved in the details. It's a nice shadow where his hand's coming out of the cuff. I could probably put a little line under there as well. Do something similar there around that wrist. Around that forearm, and that one. And then I'm really tempted to do something here, but I like how well that's working with almost no information. So I'm going to resist temptation and leave it like that. And then I can come back to this guy's head here. And then I need to go a little more into the greens. Let's grab a bit of the yellow and mix that in with what I've got on the brush, but keep things fairly dark. And let's see how that's going to work here. It's not too bad. So little bits of dark within the dark reflection. And the underside of that circle is, you know, is fairly dark as well. It's a sort of linear shadow there. Put some more darks in there as well. And then a line of dark shadow along that burst of gold that I put in before. Along the edge of the clarinet. I'm going to come back and put in some very bright whites in there in a bit. Just mixing in a bit more of the bluey colour to darken some of those shadows. And I'm starting to think we're not too far off leaving things as they are. So what I'm going to do now is just clean my brush and get some nice highlights going. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is grab a little bit of titanium white, which is far more opaque than the tinting white. And now, despite my grumblings earlier, I quite like the almost transparent nature of the hat, and there's not really much there. So I'm going to resist the temptation to do too much here, but I'm going to put just a little highlight there of the pure titanium white, and then a little line of highlight down the edge of the hat. And that's it. That's all I'm doing for the hat. Now, I'm really, really tempted to put in the collar of this guy, but this bit here I feel is working so well. That's it. I'm done with that guy. So over to this chap here, though. Now, I do want to include his collar. So really all I want is enough to show that he's wearing a collared shirt. I think it's not working quite as well as I hoped, but you know, it's okay, I think. I don't think I need to go too crazy. Now I've got this line of dark around there, so I'm going to echo that with a line of the white. And I was about to put a highlight on his shoulder, but I don't think it needs it. Let's grab a bit more paint here. Okay, on to guy number 3. So here, just put a little lick of white around there. And that brush stroke went on a bit heavy, but it's not too bad. It's just to bring that arm out a little bit from the background. Again, I don't think I need to do too much to this guy's head or even the collar, really. So I think I'm going to leave that. Now for this gent over here, I put in the shadows on his collar, or hinted at them before. So we'll just show some indication. And again, there's not much info there, but I personally feel that's working reasonably well. Now, on to, I think really all I want to do now is put a very pale green highlight in there. So we'll grab, whoops, sorry about knocking the camera there. Grab some of the greeny color that I had before. Get a little bit of water on the brush. So I've got a nice, very pale green there. Put in some of those rather muted highlights. Grab a bit more of the white. Mix that in thoroughly in with what's left on the brush, and then within those little highlights I just put down, just put a couple of areas which are brighter again. And then I'm going to grab a bit of the cad yellow light and mix that in with what I've got left on my brush. And then I've just remembered I intended to put some highlights on the clarinet. So I'm just going to get a different brush a moment. Okay, so we're going to go still with the filbert, but we're going to go pure titanium white. And add a couple of highlights there. I mean, I don't know that I think this sort of says banjo, because although it's not described that well, the posture of the guy works well enough. This says, I can't remember, is that a French horn? I can't remember, but that says big horn, was that a tuba? I honestly can't remember for the moment, but it's not that well described, but I think it kind of works. I think you'd know what that is. The trumpet is okay, just because of the posture of the guy. I mean, this guy could almost be holding a stick, but in context with the other three, I think it's okay. I think I could just about get away with it. I'm going to just mix this white in with a bit of the sort of gold colour that I've got left on the palette, and I'm not going to do very much. And I want to try and keep the blue watercolour that's there from the beginning of the painting, but I just feel the need to just put a little bit of that top edge in, just like I've done there. And I think I'm going to resist the temptation to do any more. So I think I'm going to call this one, I just need to sign it obviously and date it, but I think I'm going to call this one Taking It to the Streets, or Take It to the Streets, or something like that. So the idea was that, if you remember, although these three are in the foreground, they're barely described. There's no colour at all. And then my hope is that, the focus, even though these guys are behind these people, the focus is on these guys, and then the background's kind of abstracted, but the mix of colours. I was originally tempted to include some of the text which appears on the shop windows and things, but I think that would make it too specific a background. And I've decided to leave this echo of this guy's head visible. And I quite like, some of the original drawings showing around this guy's head and arm. And I think that adds a really nice energy to him. I think it looks like he's, just moving slightly. And as mentioned before, I like the simplicity of this guy on the left. I mean, bits of it are wrong, really, but I kind of let loose a little bit with the waistcoat with this one, whereas perhaps I was a bit too linear on these guys. But I think the overall effect, I think it works quite well. I think they look like a nice ensemble. So there we go. Let me show you some better images of the finished painting.